Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures podcast. Today's episode with Jameeleh Shelo is all about NFTs, the good, the bad, and the ugly of non-fungible tokens. Jameeleh has a really extensive background in the art world, all different types of arts. And so we get into the conversation about how sort of the mainstream art community has been receiving NFTs, while some people have a strong negative visceral reaction to NFTs, but also, a lot of the good, how communities are being formed, how different social causes are being promoted, how communities are coming together to kind of organize and promote not only businesses, money directly to artists, but a number of new markets that we discuss in this episode that I think we could not have imagined 2 years ago, that I think is actually encouraging. So like I say at the beginning, I think the space is simultaneously awesome and ridiculous. And so for us to move forward in a way that is beneficial for humanity, that helps humans flourish, I think is key here. So if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com. There you'll see more extensive show notes and different links to the things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can always, of course, just listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Jameeleh Shelo. All right, Jameeleh, welcome to the show.
Hi.
So this last year especially has been a pretty wild ride in the Web3 space for all things NFTs, which I'm looking forward to diving into that from a variety of different angles. But maybe before we do that, because this is first time on the show, although we've done a number of different podcasts on the Proto podcast. So people listening in or watching, if you search for the Proto podcast, you'll see me and Jameeleh and a number of other guests there. But would you mind just introducing yourself, a little bit about your background story thus far?
All right. Hi, Will. Hello, fans. I'm Jameeleh Shelo. I'm one of the managing directors of Proto, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. And as I was telling Will, I'm excited to talk about NFTs. And to just give you a little bit of background about me, I love art, but I also am a member of the Arts Club Chicago, and I am co-chair of their programming board. So I do spend a good amount of my free time kind of surrounded by art, but like older art. But I also sort of have a foot in digital art. So it's something that I'm very much interested in. It's something that I study. I spend a lot of time sort of watching these trends and figuring out why they are what they are. And that's kind of, I think, what we're hopefully going to be discussing today.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Okay, so you have some opinions, which is good because this space is both, I would say, my opinion, both sort of awesome and ridiculous at the same time. So we can talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the basics. What is an NFT?
All right, non-fungible token, right? So the best way to describe it is, let's say that you go to a museum and the Mona Lisa is there, right? There's only one Mona Lisa. Someone has already certified that this is the Mona Lisa. If you take a picture of it, it doesn't matter. That is not the Mona Lisa. The original Mona Lisa is right there in front of you, and somebody owns that, and that is 100% certified. Now, just pretend that the Mona Lisa is a digital asset. So that means that it's, and it's a weird way to say it, but like a picture on your screen. So someone has created a piece of art or music or something of that nature, and they said, this is the only one. And even if somebody takes a picture of it, even if somebody copies it exactly, this one is certified, and it's certified through blockchain. And this is the original. So I think that might be the easiest way to describe it to somebody.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
So what's up? Like, why did these become so popular? Like, why is it all the rage the last year? And we see bored apes and pudgy penguins and lions and zebras and adjective animal all over the place, and people are using them for their profile pictures. What happened?
So there's a couple kind of interesting things that happened, right? The first thing that happened is we live in a digital world, but it took the art world a really long time to accept that, right? So there's all these people who consider themselves tastemakers. Like if you go to the Louvre in France, or if you go to any like big art house anywhere in any major city in the world, there are these people there who decide that this is art and this art has value, and this is how much the art should cost, and they sell it to people who can afford it, and those people say, look, I have this fancy art, and the longer I have it, the more valuable it gets. And then one day you're Oprah and you sell like a Gus Van Sant for like, I think it was like $150 million or $180
Mm,
million, right?
mm,
Like, so there's these people who are like tastemakers, and they're very, very like particular about being tastemakers. Like, it's a very exclusive club, and they decide what is art, right? And it took years for even things like the Museum of Modern Art to happen, where Jeff Koons could come in with his, like, the little dog that's like a balloon, the balloon dog that's made out of metal and it's giant, and people to say, okay, now this is art, right? But like, those people at the time were considered very like risque. And I compare people who are creating NFTs to that right now. And the other thing is, we ignored graphic designers for a really long time. So there are these people who are making amazing art. These
yeah.
graphic designers who are doing these art, but they were doing it on the computer. And because you
Mm,
could press, click and copy, and send it to like a thousand people, that everybody was like, this isn't really art, right? Because it's not rare. And Jacques, whatever in the Louvre, has not said that it's art. So all this talent was almost like going to waste, and the tastes weren't really
mm,
changing. So I think what happened is, we had a bunch of people that were like, I'm an artist, and now I can create something and make it one of a kind. I can certify it and I can put it up there. And I can contact people who have the means to buy these things, but are not quite considered tastemakers. Because if you look at the people who really champion NFTs, it's like a lot of celebrities, but they're not like tastemakers, if that makes
mm,
sense, right?
mhm.
Like, it's like your Paris Hiltons and your Justin Biebers, especially Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is like, I NFT queen right now. I don't know if you guys are following
Mm,
anything she's doing with NFTs, but it's actually, um, the way that she's pushing it forward, I think would have taken NFTs on their own like 10 years to even just get to that level. Like, she goes on Jimmy Fallon and openly discusses what an NFT is, and talks about, like, how she wants to buy them and sell them and their value and all these things. And it seems like a weird thing, right? Like, why should somebody who maybe in the 2000s, we as a collective people decided was like, you know a joke, right? Like a blonde in a baby doll dress, and now she is a tastemaker. She's saying these NFTs are valuable, buy
mm,
them. She's gifting them to people. Like, there's all these
mm,
things that she's doing to increase their value. And I
mm,
know who she is, right? But I don't know who currently runs the, like, Natural History Museum. I don't know who owns all these art galleries. But I'm at the same age as she is. I've literally been following her my entire life.
mm,
So, not to say like I'm a big fan or anything like that, but what she's doing makes sense. It's the same thing with like Justin Bieber. Like, people know who Justin Bieber is. So when Justin Bieber buys a Bored Ape for, I think it was like $8 million or something crazy like that, people are like, oh, he just bought a valuable piece of artwork. Like, it's worth putting in the news. He wasn't a tastemaker before so much, but I would say that he is a becoming a tastemaker now by putting his money where this artwork is.
mm. So this concept of tastemaker, right?
Yeah.
I've been in Web3 crypto for long enough to know that the tastemakers in finance, the tastemakers in technology, the tastemakers in venture capital, the tastemakers now sounds like art, um, have been, let's say, not so popular with the masses, and so there's been a bit of a revolution. What do you think? Is that a good thing? Like, what's your comment on the masses trying to get in on this?
I personally think it's an amazing thing,
Mm,
right? Like, I think for me, it always comes down to social, and me, it always comes down to a social justice thing. But I think it's crazy that we have like the British museums that have like all these artifacts from other countries, and they decide that these are valuable now arbitrarily, and whereas, why do you get to decide when something is valuable? Like, why not let the masses decide when something is valuable? Why not let people who want to do this decide to do this? And also, look at the artwork that is becoming NFTs, that are becoming popular NFTs. Like, I don't know if you remember the band The Gorillas that did.
I don't know if I
So,
remember the gorillas.
in the I want to say in the early 2000s, there was a musical group that only created animations of themselves. So they
Mm.
were like, they would do music videos where it was all animated. They did like a Cribs episode where they were animations of themselves. You never saw who the people really were.
Ah.
Yeah, and they were like insanely popular. And if you look at the style of like NFTs and stuff that are coming out right now, it's kind of that same cool animated style
Oh,
that
interesting.
like really got, I think I personally feel like gets ignored. Like it gets ignored because it feels too like maybe a little too urbane, a little too like in some respects, I think people look at it and say like, oh, well, this is just like low class artwork, right? Like it's not, it feels like a comic book or it feels like whatever, but why isn't that art? Like, why not? So yeah, I think it's amazing. I also think it's amazing because anybody can get into it. Like I can
Mm.
go and, I can go and find somebody like this is a weird way to go about it, but hypothetically you could go and find somebody who's tweeting that they put up their tweets, and you could take pictures of their tweets every day if they're sort of famous, and wait for them to delete one, take the one that they deleted, turn that into an NFT and sell it, and do all sorts of like weird things like that. Like it's not really it, there's all sorts of like interesting ways that you can get into this. I don't recommend that one because it feels a little predatory, but there's kind of cool things that you can do that you probably weren't able to do before that, I think you would maybe consider like pop art in some respects.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anybody could go take a picture of a potato, sells it an NFT for $1 billion if somebody will pay for it.
If exactly, if somebody will pay for it. But there's also this kind of idea of like devaluing sort of like other things. And I think this is what the tastemakers are worried about. Like if people are buying NFTs, if people want bored apes, well, what about these like, these Bakiats that I've spent my whole life curating? Like are these worthless now? And I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a different medium that needs to be
Yeah.
accepted.
So let's talk about these markets then. Why are people spending 7, 8 figures buying JPEGs? Why is this happening?
So one, certified JPEGs, right? So
Okay,
it's
fair,
the
fair.
only JPEG of it that has been certified by, blockchain. So it is the
Okay,
only one
so you know
that
it's unique. Yep.
it's unique. I think two is, why would you spend millions of dollars to buy like a painting?
Mm.
It's the same, it's kind of the exact same reason. Like sometimes it's the art calls to you. Sometimes it's a value play, like you're hoping that the cost of it will go up. Sometimes it is, your own personal want to be sort of a tastemaker, to have those sorts of things in your home or in your, in your portfolio and your lifestyle. And then I think some of it is kind of a rebellion, to be honest with
Mm.
you, you know?
Mm.
So, and I think there is like an art rebellion that's kind of happening, right? Where like all these people are coming out of kind of the underground, and they're like, well, we can do something cool too,
Because they're
just
rebelling against these tastemakers.
yeah, they're rebelling against the taste breakers, and they're probably just rebelling against old ideas, right? Like
Mm.
why do I have to pick up a paintbrush if I can use my mouse? Like if,
Mm.
one thing, it doesn't have to, like, why do I have to fly, why does someone have to fly halfway around the world sometimes to see a piece of artwork, like when there might be access to it on your computer and you can see it and you can share it with the whole wide world and still own it? You know what I mean? And I think that's something else too, right? Like there's never been an opportunity like this ever in the history of time to truly just share your art.
Yeah.
And that's something, or art that you love. Like if you're so passionate about this artwork and like you buy it, people can still see what it looks like. Like, they can, you can display it on your open seas page and like let people see it live. And that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that from my opinion, it feels like we need the GeoCities of NFT land, right? We need the MySpace. We're not quite there yet. The analogous time is we're probably somewhere in the mid to late 90s. I guess maybe GeoCities were a thing, but from my perspective, and maybe you are aware, there's no multi-chain gallery. I know
Yeah.
there's Gallery SO and maybe others, but there's no one place that it's, if I want to go look at Jameelah's NFTs, the ones that she wants to show off to the world.
Yeah.
Right now, there's some. If you buy an ENS domain, right? If you have Jameelah.eth, which I don't know if you do, but you might want to check to see if that's available.
I'll look at it. Yeah, buy it.
Then I can go to anybody's Ethereum address and look at all their NFTs. Now, this very popular video, skeptical of NFT land, called "Line Goes Up," was published, and he made the world aware that your Ethereum address is public. Anybody can put any art and just graffiti your wall at any time. In fact, malicious attackers have put malicious NFTs on somebody's wall, like celebrities' walls, because you
Yeah.
can't. The only way to get rid of them is to transfer them out, and then people sign to transfer them out, and then they have malicious code in them, and it drains their whole wallet. So there are problems with just putting a public address on, let's say, Ethereum, because that's a very public. Anybody can move anything into that address at any time. So let's talk about the good, bad, and the ugly. I think I just touched on one part of the ugly,
Yeah.
but if you were to sort of recap the good, sounds like you're disrupting tastemakers. Like how would you recap the good of
Yeah.
NFTs?
I think that's a perfect way to say it. One, definitely disrupting the tastemakers, right? Like so that it allows us to see new artists easily, right? Because even now to this day, if you want to be an artist, you need like someone to sponsor you, and you need someone, you need like possibly some kind of training and schooling and supplies and all this good stuff. Now you just need your laptop, Wi-Fi, and hopefully some decent graphic design software, open source it, and so disrupting the tastemakers. Two, there is some transfer of wealth in some respects. Like you
Yeah,
might buy you might buy an NFT and it'll be worth X, Y, Z. Be worth a ton of money, or you might create one and then it might blow up and
and
get a ton of
and you're
money.
putting money directly into the wallets of the
Of course, you're
creators.
creating it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now there is a little bit of something in that. Just on the flip side of it is that not every NFT is going to be valuable or retain its value. Just like the same thing with any investment, right?
yeah,
So if you're looking from a purely art standpoint, you're like, yes, I can share my work. This is amazing. This is beautiful, wonderful. But if you're looking at it from some of a fiscal, like a fiscal standpoint too, and you're like, I am going to go out and I'm going to, I've got $500,000 and I'm just going to buy NFTs, like you might lose $500,000. Like, it is what it is, and that's part of that's part of the bad and the ugly. Like you could easily spend, you could easily get caught up in the hype and lose a ton of money. And I think the really ugly is what you're talking about right now with like things like that malicious code and just like, when the internet first came out and it was sort of like the wild, wild west. I think NFT world is still a little bit of the wild, wild west, right? Like, so there isn't
yeah,
enough regulation there, and a lot of people hate regulation. So, sometimes it's hard to get those things. But I'm just gonna lowbrow it a little bit. Like, if anybody's watching that show on Hulu, that's like the Pam and Tommy like sex tape, and how like at the time there were just no rules on the internet. So when that when their tape got released, there was no protections for them whatsoever. Um, in some respects, NFTs are a little bit like that. Like people can go on your Ethereum address and go on your wall and send you malicious code and all these things, and that is very bad because the people that are buying these things tend to have a good amount of money, and like they might get their banks broken into, or they might get Bitcoin stolen. And I have a friend that works in worked very steadily in Bitcoin for a while, and he literally, if I like text him hi, he's like, are you a bot? Like instantly he's like, are you a scammer trying to scam me and
right.
scam me out of Bitcoin? And I'm like,
Oh
no,
yeah,
say
I
hello.
always assume I'm getting scammed. I mean, yeah, I get I
Yeah.
don't know how many calls a day from people or emails trying to fish. Uh, and I'm in some pretty weird discords, which I kind of like, sort of seeing kind of cypherpunk, solar punk culture. Uh, and but I just always assume that everything's a scam. I try,
Yeah.
in fact, a lot of these scams are pretty sophisticated. They will bring in all kinds of different, like they'll have lots of different points of celebrities and other people that you trust, potentially verifying. Right, there's like constantly scams going on YouTube where they'll take videos of people, of celebrities, and just put a little like a screen wrapper around it, that these people are giving away ether or something. Anyway, just constantly scams going
Right. But
on.
it takes so little to do those scams, right? But like
Yeah,
if they get the right person, they can like get a ton of, they can get a lot of money out of it. Like they can,
that's right.
it's the old, what is it? The like give us your social security number. I'm an exiled prince scam. Like is like the Nigerian. Yeah, right. Like no, most people don't respond to that, and then you get that one person that does, and that scammer goes hard. Like they're
Yeah,
like, okay, someone responded. Like I am gonna, this is it. This is my target. This is my mark. And I think it's the same thing. Like it's the same thing with like NFTs. I think whenever there's something where there's money to be made, there's always going to be people that are going to try to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm surprised, and I think I don't know if this is happening, and I just like haven't read an article about it. I'm surprised that these major art institutions haven't started turning their artwork into NFTs. Because if you were to think about it from a logical standpoint, it would, double your assets, really, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have your physical thing, you have your NFT, and then you can even create like, marketplaces where you can sell the NFT, but you still get to keep the physical piece. All
Unless
these
they
like
thought it would do you think it would they might suspect it would decrease the value of their physical pieces if they went online as well? Would that be
I
part of it, or is it just totally different worlds?
I hate to say this, but I think it's totally different worlds. I think that the it is a much older group of people that are like on the board of directors of these places and that run these places. Like, um,
Might actually increase the value
right, like I think
of the
that,
yeah.
right, and I think it's a confusing concept, right? Because previously your artwork was more valuable the less people saw it in some respects, right? The rarer it was, like the less on display it was, the more protected it was,
Mm,
the more we were like, wow, this is a big deal, like it's time to see it. But I feel like with NFTs it's the opposite, right? So like if if someone takes a board ape and they kind of like, take a screenshot of it and they put it in Adobe and they alter it a little bit and they put it back up, that board ape just became cooler, right? The original board ape just became cooler
yeah.
because more people are seeing it. And so this concept is it's a very hard concept for art people to grasp. It's so strange to them, like at places that I've been that do a lot of like physical artwork that they fly somebody in and they fly their installation in and it's only for 3 weeks and you have 3 weeks to come and no photographs inside the building and like all these things to sort of protect the privacy of the artwork. Like, if they find somebody put it up on Instagram, they ask them to take it down right away because, you have to come and you have to physically experience it in order for you to understand this. And I think NFT people are like, nah, it's cool. Yeah, take a screenshot of it, do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah, in
so
fact, the more it gets pumped around, the better. The more it'll increase in value, right? And that's why they put all the board apes up in Times Square and and Super Bowl commercials and all this stuff. They want to get these out there because it pumps the value. And so there was basically when it came out, there were three things that caught my eye in terms of how I think everybody, especially artists, should be thinking about these. Number one, just make art and sell it. Like your wacky friends in crypto will probably buy it, right? I am one of those wacky friends. So any of my artist friends who are listening or watching this, please put NFTs up and let me know. Like pump me your NFTs because I will probably buy them. Um, so that's great. Like more money to artists.
yeah.
The second thing is NFTs for social causes, right? One of the first NFTs I purchased, um, at least that I've displayed publicly, right? There's some that I don't, that I maybe just, although it's interesting to buy an NFT and not share it because it kind of goes counter to a lot of what these NFT clubs are doing. But one of the first NFTs that I show on my Ethereum address is called Alpha Girl Club. And I bought two of these NFTs and they're all about female empowerment and raising awareness for mental health. And I've attended a bunch of their like open night mic nights on Twitter Spaces, and it's a bunch of people sharing. I've gone up on stage and shared with them about sort of family stories around mental health, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just this really cool community that has come together. Just, maybe some people are just speculating that these NFTs are going to go up. But the more beautiful part is actually the community that is coming around these social causes. And then the third thing is for businesses. Businesses should develop NFT strategies as a way not just to sell art to make money, not just to sell art to build a community that's going to market this, but it actually can create interesting dynamics for ownership, for participation in creation, to allow your business to go directions you may never have, especially if you corners of the metaverse, new markets that you can't even dream of right now, and like different gaming. That's the spectrum, at least how I'm thinking about it. Is there anything you would comment on or
Yeah.
refine on the way I'm thinking about that?
Yeah. So what's really interesting too is I think an area that people completely forget about is music, right? So if you used to go to the store and maybe you would buy, well, I would buy a CD, but like, people, I mean, they'd buy an album, right? And maybe it was like the first album that got released of this thing. And it like, there was an experience there of like opening the album, listening to it. And with music becoming more digital, like you buy your albums, streaming on your service or Spotify or whatever. Some of that experience has been lost. And I think it's really interesting because I think NFTs are bringing some of that experience back. So what happens is an artist can record an album and then they can do a little bit of extra in that album, and they can create an NFT. And this is like our original release, our first, this is
Yeah.
this is the only one. And I as the artist gave like a little bit of a forward and a little bit at the end. I talked a little bit at the back end of the album, or I added an extra song or something like that. And that is now yours and you can own it. And it sort of adds to that experience, right? So there's this experiential value, right? And then there's what you're talking about with the communities being built up around NFTs. It's amazing what art can do to raise awareness for social causes. And I think the way that NFTs get shared, that makes a huge difference in how people see it. And I think with me, and you and I will have discussed this previously, but like I'm Palestinian. My parents, I'm a child of diaspora, which means that like really, probably my family members and I are probably never really going to truly be able to ever go back to Palestine,
Mm.
because of the way the situation is over there. But and I told you this story a while ago. Someone had found the first driver's license issued in Ramallah ever, and it turned out that it was my great great grandfather, and
Mm.
they'd put it up on Facebook, and they were like, "This is the first driver's license issued ever in Ramallah," and like people were tagging until it finally came back to our family members. Um, and I think how amazing would it be to have sort of the NFT of that driver's license, and how
Mm.
amazing would it be to be able to like display that, right? And how amazing would it be to even just be able to go back and collect all these artworks and to be able to give them back to their original owners, and but also be able to create NFTs of them so they still exist somewhere, right? So you can still view them and send them out to people. You can own a piece of them if you want, if someone wanted to sell it, but then you still actually get to keep like the physical copies. And I think there's something so amazing in that culturally. And I think that's an experience that like NFTs really like afford people. Like
Yeah.
I truly think that photography is going to go sort of in this direction too. Like I think you're going to find a lot of like physical photographs and like NFTs of photographs, you know, excuse me, especially as things are happening out in the world right now. Because everyone has they have their cell phone, they have their camera. And I think it's going to sound weird, but I think we're going to be able to like NFT life experiences, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
100%.
So and to me, that's probably the miracle of it all, right? Like if I can, through a piece of digital artwork, put myself in someone else's shoes to understand what their life is like, like there's no reason you can't create like a day in the life of, a mother in Gaza and make that into an NFT artwork and it be like a series, you know what I mean? And
Love
then
it.
put that out. Like there's so many beautiful things that you can do. And then it's also just a way for people to share experiences, because when it's out there and it's in the world, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So like, like the conversations can happen, right? Because like again, and I know I keep using Palestine as an example, it's just because, you know, I am Palestinian, so it's an easy one for me to use, but like, there's people who are from Gaza who they haven't been back in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. There's people who never met their grandparents, right?
Mm.
But like in some ways, if there was like a record or if there was artwork with these pieces, those are just like pieces that you can take home with you, like you can see sort of a different life.
I would love, by the way, the entrepreneurs listening in, please make this, because I would love to go to Jameelah's gallery and see photographs, see artwork, see, listen to audio clips, listen to video, listen and watch videos,
Yeah.
however you would want to display it across whatever chain you want to buy these on, where you can prove digital scarcity, but it's your way to share with the world these stories. I would want to hang out there and read all the stories, learn about all those experiences. That would be really cool. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I mean by the GeoCities, right? If everybody had this for themselves, and then we can layer on social protocols, we can layer on DeFi, we can layer on DAOs, we can layer on ownership, we can layer on work. and that actually is how Web3 is being built. There are these protocols that can be used in any interface, any application. So if you get the protocol similar to HTTP and SMTP for the web and for email, and everybody has lots of different web browsers and lots of different email clients, such that you could have protocols for social and everything that I just named, and you can use whatever client you want to view Jameelah's art or your gallery or whatever you want to show off. So this is why I want to buy NFTs from my friends, because one, I just want to support my friends, right? Two, I'm into the causes that they're into, and I want to be able to show off their causes. And then three, some of them are starting businesses, right? And even at Proda, we invest holistically in entrepreneurs to promote human flourishing. If we could just buy little NFTs as a way of supporting these entrepreneurs, that could be super cool. And we could have our own gallery at Proda where we're like, here's all the NFTs for the entrepreneurs that we work with. This is why I think, as said at the beginning, I think it's both awesome for all these reasons, and it's just kind of ridiculous that everybody's just making a little Pudgy Penguin knockoff and then pumping the price and then rugging everybody, selling at the top, and then sort of scheming everybody, all these retail investors out of there.
And
Right.
pardon my language right now, but I do think like Bored Apes and Pudgy Penguins, and I think there is it Cyberpunks, and like all of them. Some of them are definitely like FUs to the. I actually
Right.
didn't want to use the bad word.
The crypto punks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CryptoPunks. Thank you. And I think a lot of it is so much of it is like FUs to the system. But there's also this weird flip side of that side of art just doesn't get good representation, right? Like
Mm,
I know it sounds weird, but there was like a while where this whole thing was like Suicide Girls, where it was these models that were very like goth in appearance, and had this
right.
very specific style, and everybody was like, "This is going to be like the next thing," and like modeling, and this is going to be, this is where we're going to be like sourcing or whatever. And I feel like it like never took off, but I think it's
Mm,
because there's sort of this like goth, like hip hop, punk aesthetic that exists in the world. Cyberpunk, I would even call it, that like exists in the world that like just doesn't really get like that much attention. Like, and
yeah.
it gets attention from like younger people,
Right.
but I just think that they're like people are like, nah, like it's like icky. Like, what is this, vampires? I don't know. I don't get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's that, and I think that group is just like chomping at the bit. Like, they're like, no, like I
Yeah.
made this. I think it's cool. Like, my opinion matters.
And
Yeah.
there are new markets being created everywhere, not only in all these
Yeah.
new blockchains that are being created, but the NFT galleries that are in these blockchains, the metaverses that then have NFT galleries in those metaverses, the different games that are going to be swapping NFTs. So your sword in this game can be the same sword in the other game. It is impossible for us to, even right now, to imagine all the new markets that are being created. And it's not just pump and dump, right? There are certain members that are influential politically and otherwise that are just basically saying it's all schemes and pump and dump. While yes, it's worse in many cases than that. Like there's definitely an ugly, and we all should be aware of that. There's a lot more happening than just that. There's a way for people to express themselves, get paid money for that, to be part of a community, to promote social causes, to promote their businesses, right? This whole spectrum. This, I think, is a message for the regulators to be aware of, that it's more than just this financial scare thing.
It's not a fad.
And yeah, and it's
Yeah.
important because as of this recording, yesterday the White House issued an executive order basically saying, hey, America, like we actually are going to take this more seriously. Like this is part of innovation, and we're not going to just react and just clamp down on this and make NFTs and DeFi and cryptocurrency go away. We want to methodically think, how can we help Americans? How can we promote human flourishing? How can we, even in the executive order, it promoted diversity, equity, inclusion. It wants all the different aspects in this new future. And I think, I don't know, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty encouraged right now.
Well, here I'll even take it back to like, I know we're talking about NFTs, but like just a thought about cryptocurrency, right?
Mm,
Like, let's say you live in a country where 200 is enough to survive, and you can simply increase your income using cryptocurrency by 5%. Now, to like most of us, we'd be like, oh, like 5% of $200, like, who cares, right? But to that that makes a huge difference. So this is why those things actually do matter, right? Because there are kids right now sitting on the computer, sitting around trying to figure out how to make money online, and it's all your like usual IZ scams. There's smart ones that are going to sit there and they're going to be like, okay, how does this cryptocurrency work? Okay, I have $100. Can I make it into 100? So $102. What can I do with this $102? Can I five? And we like, when you're in a place of like affluence, you forget how much of a difference that little bit of money can style.
Yeah.
And once they start figuring out how to how the to right, it seems like it seems almost trivial, right? Because I think, when you look at someplace, like when you think about like the White House, or you think about like, well, we've got to regulate it, there's millions of dollars going out and blah, blah, blah. When you think about the average person and how maybe $500 a month could easily change, it might get them a better place to live.
Yeah.
It's payment on a car.
Yeah.
It's food for their children. If you're in a position of power and you're not paying attention to this, and you're literally just taking another way, another way that people can make income. And the reality situation is that divide is getting bigger and bigger. So, if the government can find ways to keep this safe and to teach people and to sort of embrace cryptocurrency and even make it, not that it's not legitimate, but like legitimize it, I think that's a big way to get like Americans to have a come up, if that makes sense.
Good. I love it. All right. Well, any final words, anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure to get out to the audience about this space?
I think two things is, one, definitely be careful. Like there are a lot of, Will is not incorrect. There's a lot of scammers and some of them are really smart and they will figure out all sorts of crazy ways to like, get it in there. But two, if you're creating anything right now, I think you should turn it into an NFT.
Mm.
In fact, scan your passport, turn that into an NFT. Driver's license, turn it into an NFT. Like everything that you own, turn it into an NFT. Family portraits, turn it into an NFT. Why not? and let's see what happens. I think that we're going to be living more and more in this digital space every single year. I think you're going to be amazed at how quickly we adapt to this technology. So yeah, turn it into an NFT. Turn this podcast into an NFT when we're done, Will.
We should probably do that. At least take clips from it and sell those as NFTs. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
All right. That's good homework assignment for us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jameeleh, if those who want to continue the conversation with you, how can they find you online?
You can find me, the best way is actually to email me. I'm old school. Jameeleh@protolabs.com is the best way to get a hold of me. You can always, if you are in the Protoverse, Proto ecosystem, you can always contact me over Slack. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or just have a conversation with you. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, Jameeleh.
Your friend.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. This was great. Thank you for having me.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it'd be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.